If you look at our planet from space, you'll see a beautiful blue sphere with a huge black spot, from which the stench of dirty streets and filthy elevators reaches all the way to the stratosphere. The people living in this black hole, for some reason, consider themselves special and incredibly important for the Earth. But that's a delusion of cosmic proportions.
Oh, my beloved mother, Rasha!
Russians sincerely believe in three things: that you can drink window cleaner, that your head is meant for breaking bottles over it, and that Russia is a cosmic superpower. And that's all because Moscow, in the best traditions of a pickpocket on a tram, has appropriated all the Soviet Union space achievements for itself. Gagarin, the satellite, the lunar rover, all of that belongs to Russians thanks to Putin and his pet television.
And Putin is definitely not obsessed with a toilet brush. He is a man of a completely different caliber.
But any living creature, unless it's a terrifying xenomorph, of course, has a perfectly reasonable and pertinent question. How could the vast nation of Russia have truly gone to space on its own if they're still rolling out rusty, antiquated low fans off the assembly line?
For example, a new low fan costs 2 million rubles. And here rust has already started to appear rust on a brand new car.
What's space exploration in a country where a robot is an entertainer in a cardboard costume?
MDM Media published photos of a robot being prepared for theatrical performances.
I am quite good at mathematics, but I also genuinely want to learn how to draw and compose beautiful music, as well as explore other creative pursuits.
Well, here you go.
What kind of space technology can there be in a country where people are afraid of 5G?
To briefly summarize the theories gaining more and more followers every day, the coronavirus was invented to pave the way for the rollout of 5G networks, then for mass microchipping. Nikita Mikhalkov is broadcasting about this on federal television channels.
A chip is implanted into a person's body, serving as a controlling device.
That's the internet! We don't need your internet!
What Russian space exploration is really like, we got to see for ourselves quite recently, munching on popcorn as we watched the adventures of the Russian spacecraft Luna 25.
Roscosmos reported the crash of the Luna 25 mission. The agency clarified that according to preliminary calculations, the spacecraft entered an unplanned orbit and collided with the surface of the moon.
And think how much pomp there was. Russian television had already colonized the moon and was traversing the endless expanses of the universe.
After we complete the autonomous and integrated tests at the second launch pad, we will begin flight with the heavy Angara. With Angara, we see prospects for creating a transportation system to the moon.
Every drunken patriot was shouting that the moon is ours. And the debt-ridden lumpins went to sign contracts to liberate the primordial Russian satellite of Earth from cosmic fascists and banderites.
So, where exactly are we all from?
From the truly dark side of the moon.
In reality, Russians would have kept looking at space only through an empty bottle if it weren't for the Ukrainians. Without Ukrainian intellect and industry, there would have been no Soviet space program at all. The first artificial satellite of Earth, the first human in space, the first person in open space, all of this was thanks to the Ukrainian Serhiy Korolev. He was born in Zhytomyr, studied in Odessa and at KPI. Korolev wrote part of his scientific works in Ukrainian.
Serhiy Pavlovich Korolev managed this mission from start to finish. However, for many years, his name and achievements remained unknown, attributed by the party to the entire Soviet people.
Let's keep going. The entire Soviet space program was also led by a Ukrainian academician, Mikhailo Yangel, who revolutionized rocket engineering. After Yangel, the space program was headed by a native of Poltava, Volodymyr Chelomey, the creator of the Proton launch vehicle. He was, in fact, the chief designer of rocket and space technology.
Volodymyr Chelomey enrolled in the aviation faculty of the Kiev Polytechnic Institute, which is now the Kiev Aviation Institute. In 1959, at Volodymyr Chelomey's enterprise, rockets were being developed to deliver anti-space defense systems into Earth's orbit.
The engines of spacecraft Vostok, Buran, and Energia were developed by a Ukrainian Valentin Khrushchev. The intellectual contribution of Ukrainians to space exploration is, forgive the tautology, cosmic. Moreover, Ukraine became the main base for the production of spacecraft. More than 100 Ukrainian enterprises were involved in this field. Kiev Pribor, the Luch Design Bureau, Arsenal, and the flagships were Dnipro's Yuzmash and Kharkiv's Khartron. To give you a sense of scale, Yuzmash produced about 10,000 rockets. That's 60% of all Soviet production. It was Ukrainians who developed and manufactured unique high-tech equipment and control systems. If it weren't for Ukrainians, the Russians would have launched Gagarin into space from a Tsar cannon.
With your enthusiasm, you'll end up there today. Here's an interesting fact. For the manned flight to the moon, Sergei Korolev developed the powerful N-1 launch vehicle. Engineers from Dnipro created the unique Module E spacecraft for landing on the moon's surface. But all of this was assigned to be manufactured by Russian enterprises. As a result, all the tests ended in disaster. And, what do you think? Why did the Americans land on the moon, but the Soviets didn't?
Now, let's actually see how the Russians themselves explored space without Ukraine.
This is a real astronaut's glove on been to space. Well, naturally. It's been to space literally just in 2019.
Let's kick off the hit parade of space achievements with the Russian cosmonauts, who broke the patriotic toilet on the International Space Station. Unable to hold in the results of their patriotic bodily functions any longer, the Kostroma Guardians of the Galaxy had to knock on the American module so that the NATO folks would let them use their restroom.
A series of malfunctions in the Russian segment of the SS toilet broken down. Most likely it happened because of an air bubble that formed in the system.
Let's hope the Russians didn't steal the Americans' toilet. I wonder if they had boards and roofing felt delivered from Earth to fix their toilet.
Indoors, yes. There's a toilet, a shower in the house, yes. I don't have that, you understand? And I was ashamed of these things. And now you're comparing me to everyone. I'm not like everyone. That's absolutely true. Definitely not like everyone else. No toilet or shower at home. Don't need one. No stink, no indoor cleanup.
By the way, the presence of a traditional wooden outhouse in the Russian module explains why a hole appeared in the Russian module on the ISS.
The air leak on the International Space Station was caused by the carelessness of an employee at the Russian Design Bureau. It turned out that the microcrack in the Soyuz MS-09 spacecraft appeared while it was still on Earth. An employee of the Design Bureau simply filled the crack with glue, after which the spacecraft successfully passed their tightness tests. But once in space, the crack reopened, causing the leak.
And of course, how could we go without some ROC madness? Everyone knows that every gram of cargo delivered into orbit is extremely expensive. That's why normal astronauts only take valuable equipment for scientific work. But Russian cosmonauts bring icons with them.
On board with us is the icon of your city's heavenly patroness, St. Catherine the Great Martyr. May God help us all. Happy upcoming holidays. And see you soon.
How could you go to space without icons? What if they see the Apostle Peter through the porthole and don't recognize him without a picture?
You just don't know what to do.
And if there's still room left in the cargo bay after the icons, you can bring along grandpas on sticks for cosmic victory worship. It feels like Russian cosmonauts don't do any scientific work on the ISS at all, but behave like Russian louts in Berlin.
Amid constant reports of residential buildings being shelled in Ukraine and people dying, there are still voices of those who approve of Russia's actions. In Germany, rallies in support of Vladimir Putin are regularly held, like this motorcade under the Russian tricolor with about 100 cars participating. Isn't Putin a war criminal? No, he is not a war criminal, but civilians are being killed in Ukraine. You have incorrect information.
Russia has failed all of its large-scale space projects. Since the end of 2022, work on the American-Russian Venera D project has been halted. This is a project to create and launch spacecraft to Venus.
Against the backdrop of major Martian discoveries and upcoming lunar missions, Venus has been unfairly forgotten, though this planet is called Earth's sister.
It's a pity. Of course, it would have been nice to send all Russians to Venus, but the world wasn't that lucky, and Russians themselves continue to suffer on this planet, and of course, embarrass themselves in space. Russia has been completely outcompeted by SpaceX in the commercial satellite launch sector. For comparison, SpaceX has launched over 5,000 Starlink satellites into orbit, while the not-so-great and not-so-mighty Russia has only managed to fund the launch of just 162. And even that over a span of 4 years.
Russia still provides transportation for American astronauts and other astronauts to the ISS using our launch vehicles. Although there was talk about suggesting they use a trampoline instead of spacecraft to get to the ISS.
So, a private company from the decaying West outperformed an entire space empire? That's something to be proud of.
Right now!
The much-hyped space tourism program has also stalled.
Let's go!
Now the project is frozen because wealthy clients from the US, EU, and Japan no longer want to deal with a fascist, aggressive state. Now Roscosmos can only hope for space tourists from friendly countries like Zimbabwe, Nauru, and North Korea. Although the North Koreans have already flown to the sun themselves a long time ago.
No, seriously, that's awesome. That's really solid. You guys are truly pulling it off and doing a fantastic job with it. You really know how to do it. Just amazing.
Russian space greatness is a myth, the product of wild propaganda. Without the huge contribution of Ukrainians and other peoples of the former USSR, the Russians at best would have flown after the Russian ship.
I would like to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. Our goal is not to mislead, but to highlight humor. Please take it with a smile.